to live stream. And the computers and the technology are just waking up with us, the rest of the Midwest. And good morning. Good morning. Welcome, Laura White Dungan, to Book Talk Tuesday. How are you today?
I am really good. It's a good morning.
It is. It is. And it's better now that you and I are talking. So I'm going to let everybody know just a little bit about you. I've had the great pleasure of working with Laura in different capacities over the last couple of decades. The audience members thought I was just going to say years, but I said decades. That's right. So Laura Y. Dungan is a grandmother and musician with a 35-year run in the field of community organizing, currently serving as a coach to many. A lifelong Kansan, she lives and creates alongside her partner Erin in Wichita and is co-founder of the Seed House, La Casa de Semilia, and runs Center for Creative Change, right? So welcome, Laura.
Hello, hello.
And
Good to be with you.
yeah. So, as people jump on here today, if you have any questions, we already do have a couple people watching, I see. So that's great. I'm glad you're here. Um, Feel free to jump into the chat and ask any questions. This is going to be a really great organic conversation, and I have no doubt that y'all will glean something from this conversation about Laura's upcoming novel. It's called The Archer. And The Archer is it's a story about Vonnie Ivers. Vonnie is the mother of three boys, defies social conditioning, confronts her perpetrator, and finds, like Dorothy and Oz, the way home. She meets a crusty pastor. That's one of my favorite turns of phrase. She meets a crusty pastor turned community organizer who witnesses Vonnie face inner demons and battle outer ones. Alchemizing fear, rage, joy, and pain, she turns into a flexible yet strong bow in the hands of the master organizer. In a tale of personal and community triumph, she flings the arrows of a young mother fleeing her war-torn village and a woman who crossed a river 6 times. An ode to the power of relationship. Amen to that, Lord. Can you tell us about The Archer? What has this been like for you creating this book?
Well, it's been a little time in coming, huh? Um, I think I had the first idea of writing a book over a decade ago, but it was very vague. And I knew it would somehow be connected to organizing, but I didn't, I really didn't take it much further than that. So the idea sat in the back. And if it never happened, I probably wouldn't even have missed the idea. It was
Mm,
that kind of vague, but I don't know, it did have obviously some punch to it because when you and I connected, I think it was around the Being Wichita Women project, you and I reconnecting, and I don't know, it was just like, I want Danielle to coach me. Let's, I'm gonna write a book. So, and then it took a while to get the what kind of book out. Some of the early work you did with me in the coaching around thinking about target audience, who am I writing to, um, themes. And it took me, I wrote, so 2022 was my, do I have anything to say? I really
mhm,
doubted myself that I had anything to say. So I just
mhm,
started writing every story I could think of since I've been in the field of organizing for a while.
mhm.
And after I filled a couple of books, I was like, well, I guess maybe I got something to say. but they were like these just stories with no random stories, and that story would trigger another story and another story and another story. So weeding it down into a storyline that that was a little tricky, and I felt a little straitjacketed because I thought I was going to write a memoir at first, you may remember.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got really sick in January 2023, like for 4 or 5 days. Maybe it was COVID, but I didn't do all that testing stuff. I just stayed away from people for whatever. I think at that time it was 7 days you should stay away from people. So I stayed
Okay.
from people and I read Memoirs of a Geisha.
Mm,
And it was for the second time. I'd read it a long time ago. And I was like, I'm going to write a novel. People need to know about community organizing, just like I learned so much about a geisha and the culture, the subculture that's hidden from the rest of society, really. So I wanted to free my shackles and chains of writing a memoir. I didn't want to throw anybody under a bus or,
sure.
you know, which the bravery of writing a memoir. Oh, whew, kudos to you all that do that for sure.
Well, and even the Being Wichita Women book where we've reconnected after several years were many memoirs that people had put out there. But you're right, there's something liberating about going beyond memoir and creating a fiction book because then you're, like you said, you're free from the straitjacket. You're allowed to utilize your creativity and imagination in ways that might be a little bit more limited in memoir. And it's been so fascinating to just be alongside you in this process through Quiet Storm and to reconnect because it was community organizing that had brought us together originally some 20-ish years ago. So to even at that time, as a young person, and to have the mentors that I did in organizing has left such an impact on me even to this day. So I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about, I mean, obviously community organizing has been a big part of your life, and it's been a part of my life. But why now? Why this book? Why community organizing? Um, is mentorship even still a thing? Like what? Like just talk
It's
to
a
me. Talk to
question.
me.
It's still a thing. Well, my mentor, Shell Trap, he would never call himself a mentor.
Mm,
And I only adopted the word because I needed something to describe the relationship. And I guess
mhm,
it really feels authentic that he wouldn't be calling himself a mentor, and that if I'm feeling mentored by somebody, that I guess I get to be the one that names it.
mhm.
So I think there is a lot of mentoring going on. Yeah. So it's nice that that theme in the book, that theme of a relationship that develops over time and how the
Mm,
relationship changes from, like in our relationship, like you are a very young person, and here you now were in a position of mentoring me as a coach in this
mm.
book process. And I can't tell you how gratifying that is to have a relationship be able to evolve from its very beginnings, um, to now you have your body of expertise. I'm continuing to grow in my life, and you're able to be a witness of that, and I'm able to receive all your goodies that you've got. So that's been really wonderful.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I think it show it in our example and other examples, even with, Shell Trap, who would not call himself a mentor, and that's okay. Like the dynamic nature of relationships and even mentorships is that it's not stagnant. It's not always just that one person is the knowledge holder and the other person is there to learn. And any good, solid, real dynamic growing relationships, there's that push and that pull. And I've seen that with, even young people who I'm mentoring who are really teaching me and kind of showing me the way. So that I think is a really important aspect that you're talking about, in relation to not just community organizing, but into the Archer as a whole. Because walk us through a little bit. It starts off with Vonnie Ivers as a young child, right? And then what are some of the key relationships that evolve throughout the story?
Yeah, what I tried to do in the first part of the book was to establish the depth of conditioning
Hmm.
that happened in Vonnie's life, the setup, but then the rest of her evolution and life, she's having to undo those things from, career and getting married and being a mother and buying a house. And then sort of mid book is when you start getting into Vonnie Ivers intentionally breaking out of social constructs. Um, and I guess I learned something in the process of writing this that, so many times, of course, I'm in my own brain and my own experience to like unveil the progression of watching a human being evolve over time. Um, it, yeah, every person has their setup, whatever that is. That could be generational before you even landed on the planet. And the unwinding, the undoing, the confronting, the massaging, the loving, all of the things to come to a different place and relationship too, because there's
Mhm.
uh, sexual assault, there's a very depressed father who he's carrying his stuff. But in the book, there isn't a lot of unraveling of the backstory with the father. It really is Vonnie's interaction with her father. And then the perpetrator evolving with that, having to confront, having it not turn out the way Vonnie had hoped. Um, so a lot of disappointment, pain, but I think it's threaded with hope. Well, organizing is hope to me. That's just
Yeah.
that process is what gets me up.
No, I love what you're saying. It it was such an honor to not only just work alongside you through the writing process, because the writing process in itself, my goodness, the things that you think have been buried or left aside, they will come up in your writing. And if you're, writing authentically, you will surprise yourself throughout the process. But beyond that, even when I had the privilege to sit down with your manuscript as a beta reader, and I was just I had a plethora of emotions at the depth of some of the relationships that Vonnie encountered and then how they evolved. But not only that, it was also their connection to organizing. And, for anybody out there who's not familiar with community organizing, that's okay. You could say like social issues and people coming together to make, positive change or whatever, however you describe it is okay. But to me, that coupling um, of the kind of the interpersonal relationships matched with what's happening in our social lives, and what you said too, what you just touched on, about some of the different things that cropped up. It was the pain, it was the disappointment, it was the hope, right? Like these all of these different facets. And it's so important, it's so important at a time like this. It's important anytime, But at a time like this, what are we? April 22nd, 2025, right? Um, I'm curious, Laura, and you and I have touched on this a little bit throughout our process, but we I don't think people are just working in their own silos anymore. I think we're beyond that. And what I mean to ask you is help us and help me and help others understand why there's more depth to organizing and why the relationships matter, especially for a time like this.
Mm. Mhm.
Mm.
Well, that silo thing, and I haven't heard that language in a while. It used to get thrown around a lot, breaking out of silos. And interestingly enough to me, with internet and connectivity being more available, I mean, it's not even like more available. It's like we're in the soup. That's
Yeah.
like it's being offered to us. Do we avail ourselves? We're just being awash in energy and connectivity. But it is interesting that there is a bubbling. I call it more like a bubble than a silo right now. Like with algorithms, how things work, you can just kind of stay in your little world. So to me, the same dynamic of intentionality around seeking out others, people who are different than ourselves, and
Mm,
finding where we connect and finding where
mm,
we celebrate the difference. Um, this whole commentary around if we move more towards social connection, ooh, socialism, if we move more towards social connection, then it takes all of the color and our uniqueness out of us. I mean, it's just
mm,
so interesting how we're just like totally trying to get rid of anything that makes us so wonderfully distinctive.
mm,
Getting rid of DEI, scrubbing websites with any references to color or culture, or I'm like, well, I choose not to get focused on that actually, because I just really believe that however I stand in my own power and the power with others in my community, my tribe, and not tribalism, but my people, but there's that
right.
connection that it ripples outward and it expands, and no public figure can take that away from me, from us.
Hmm. Hmm.
They can't. They just can't. So I'm hoping that the book will let people kind of think through. Organizing is one like vehicle, whether one's an artist or a writer or punching a clock for some corporation, um, which that's ending, right? As robotics, as AI, as all this comes on board, how do we walk into the future without fear? It like stretches us. Who are we as creative beings? Who are we?
Hmm.
And that we can make money, we can put food on the table, a roof over our heads. There may be some fantasy trip you've always wanted to take. Go take it, Like, how can we erase the inequities that continue to exist in the current world we're living in? It's all unraveling. To me, it's an opportunity, and I'm hoping organizing as a vehicle could be a part of creating the new world.
Mm. Ooh, yeah, that's saying a lot, and talking about just how things evolve. And when I was a little bit deeply ingrained and involved in organizing, which I'm still connected to organizing, but when I was an organizer, there's conversations that get centered around power and what is power and understanding power. And I will just say, Laura, that through our mentorship, um, and through our relationship, and even more through the Archer, that I think I feel like you're as a reader, I feel like I'm beginning to imagine more possibilities of what power can be, right? Because power is not just one thing. And there's a lot of facets to power and what it can mean in our world, and in order to help alleviate and decrease suffering among people. So I have got to thank you, for, gosh, I found myself saying this so often, but not just planting a seed, but planting a seed so many years ago and then checking in and nurturing it over the years too, through a lot of different ways. And this book, The Archer, is truly one of them. Um, so thank you for sharing your art and creativity and spirit with the world.
Hmm. Thank you.
On that note, before we wrap it up, do you have any? This is kind of just a fun little question, but do you have any advice for any other it could be writers or people who want to publish their book, or even if maybe they're seasoned authors, maybe they've been in this publishing game for a while. It doesn't really matter. What advice do you have from your perspective for anybody out there who wants to publish or write a book?
Hmm. For the people who haven't done it yet, but it's been niggling at the mind, I would just say do it.
Just do
Do it
it.
and find people that will keep you encouraged.
Hmm.
I've told you a few times, like, wow, if I know what I knew now, ignorance is bliss. Go with I want to do this and then roll with it. For people who've been like in the field, have found that the right people have shown up for me
Hmm.
a first time out of the gate writer. Um, they did not despise the beginner.
Hmm.
I have so much to learn about the craft of writing,
Me too.
um, storytelling.
Hmm.
I'm used to doing that verbally storytelling. So writing is a whole different thing. So not to despise the beginner. Uh, yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I do. Appreciate you sharing it. For anybody out there, we will be sharing all of Laura's social media and website. Any last words for us as we wrap up this book talk Tuesday?
I don't think so. I'm looking forward to meeting new people through this process, having the
Hmm.
book out there. Uh,
Yeah.
there are people who pre-ordered that I don't know them, and I'm like, I'm really curious, like, who are these people? I think it's not creepy at all if I reach out to you on social media, find you and be a little curious to know more about you and why you decided to order the book. And yeah,
Yeah, no, I don't think that's creepy. I think even with, indie publishers, and I don't want to say small authors, but newer self-published, or even, smaller presses like Quiet Storm. I think one of the true advantages is that you actually do get to build those better relationships, because it's not just divots coming up on a sales sheet. Like, who are these
right.
people? They're actual people, and people who can like verbalize and share the impact that your words had on them. So, power to you. And I no doubt you're going to meet some great people and touch a lot of lives through this. So, and thanks for your time today.
Yep. Well, there's going to be a book two. So book one, book two is going to be a different proposition altogether. And so it'll make people even more curious about book one, probably. So
Hmm. Hmm. I may know a little something about that, but I shall not say anything today. So y'all have to keep tuning in. All right. Bye, Laura. Thank you. Thank you, everybody out there on YouTube, or if you're watching on Facebook or wherever, thank you and have a beautiful day. Bye.